Commander Eliana Wright adjusted the sleeve of her uniform to cover her wristband as she walked through the gleaming corridors of the USS Horizon. The metal band sat cold against her skin, as it had for all 32 years of her life. She had long ago accepted that her band was broken, defective. It would never light up, never warm, never find her a soulmate. She nodded to passing crew members as she made her way to the morning briefing. The Horizon housed 5 different alien species, alongside her fellow Viridians, and she had studied all of them extensively in her role as the ship's xenobiology specialist. None of them had anything like the Viridian soulmate bands. None of them understood what it meant to be bandless in a society where finding your match was celebrated above all else. "Commander Wright, right on time," Admiral Kira Bennett said as Eliana entered the conference room. The Admiral's own band glowed with a soft, pulsing amber light. She had found her match 20 years ago, a fellow officer who now commanded another vessel. "Never late, Admiral," Eliana replied, taking her seat at the oval table where other senior officers were already gathered. Their bands showed various states, some glowing like Bennett's, others dormant, but not hiding them like Eliana did. Bennett activated the holographic display in the center of the table. A blue and green planet rotated slowly before them. "Earth," she said, "humanity's homeworld. As you all know, first contact was established 3 months ago. Their technology is less advanced than ours, but their adaptability is remarkable. The Coalition Council has approved accelerated diplomatic relations." Eliana studied the planet with professional interest. Humans were the 17th alien species discovered by the Galactic Coalition. Initial reports suggested they were physically similar to Viridians bipedal, similar height and build, though lacking the iridescent skin tones that characterized her people. "The human ambassador and his team will be coming aboard tomorrow," Admiral Bennett continued. "This is a critical mission. Commander Wright, as our xenobiology expert, you'll serve as the liaison officer for the human delegation." Eliana looked up from her notes with surprise. "Me, Admiral? Your understanding of biological compatibility issues makes you ideal. We need to ensure no cross-contamination occurs while establishing comfortable living arrangements for our guests." What the Admiral didn't need to say, was that Eliana had no soulmate to distract her from the assignment. No family obligations, nothing but her career. "I'll prepare immediately," Eliana said, feeling the familiar weight of her dead band against her wrist. After the briefing, Eliana retreated to her laboratory. The room was filled with samples from dozens of world's plants preserved in clear cylinders, holographic anatomical models of various species, and her personal collection of xenobiology texts. She accessed the database on humans, reading everything available from the first contact team. Humans seemed remarkably similar to Viridians physiologically, despite evolving on a planet millions of light years away. They breathed the same air, had compatible nutritional needs, and even showed similar emotional responses. The main differences were cosmetic. Their skin lacked the subtle sheen of Viridian skin, and their eyes didn't reflect light in the same way. "Computer, any recorded instances of cross-species band activation between Viridians and any alien species?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "Negative, Commander Wright. No verified cases exist in Coalition records." She sighed and rolled back her sleeve, looking at the dull metal circling her wrist. The band had been placed there on her 5th birthday, as was tradition. It contained quantum-sensitive materials that supposedly resonated with one's perfect matcha compatibility, beyond simple attraction or shared interests. The bands were never wrong, except hers. Her parents had been devastated when years passed without activation. They had taken her to specialists, had the band tested repeatedly. It functioned perfectly. The problem wasn't the band, it was her. Something about Eliana Wright was unmatched and unmatchable. She had built her career on that fact, throwing herself into her work with the dedication of someone with nothing to lose. She had become the youngest xenobiology specialist in the fleet, earning commendations and respect from her peers. If she couldn't have a soulmate, she would have accomplishment. Commander, Admiral Bennett has sent the human delegation files. For your review, her computer announced. Eliana pulled up the profiles. The human ambassador was named Daniel Ross, 35 years old, a former anthropologist specializing in cultural exchange. His file photo showed a man with warm brown skin, dark hair, and a thoughtful expression. His team included security, personnel, a medical doctor, and various diplomatic aides. She spent hours studying their biology, their cultural taboos, their dietary needs. She arranged quarters with appropriate gravity settings and temperature controls. She programmed the food synthesizers to create Earth dishes. She memorized their names, backgrounds, and interests to ensure smooth interactions. That night, as she prepared for sleep, Eliana found herself staring at her band again. She rarely allowed herself to dwell on it anymore, but the arrival of a new species always triggered a small, foolish hope. 17 alien civilizations encountered, and not once had a Viridian band activated for a non-Viridian. The scientists said it was impossible. The bands were calibrated to their species-specific neural patterns. Still, she couldn't help wondering what it would feel like if her band ever did activate. The warmth, the glow, the sense of recognition that her matched colleagues described. Foolish thoughts, she muttered to herself as she turned off the lights. The next morning, Eliana dressed with extra care. She chose the formal blue uniform of the diplomatic corps, making sure her rank insignia was perfectly straight. As always, she pulled her sleeve down to cover her band. The docking bay was prepared for the arrival ceremony. An honor guard stood. At attention, Admiral Bennett waited at the forefront with Eliana and other senior officers behind her. Nervous, Commander? The Admiral asked quietly. Not at all, Eliana lied. In truth, every first contact made her slightly anxious. So many cultural misunderstandings could occur. The ship's announcement system chimed. Human shuttle docking sequence initiated. Eliana watched through the transparent barrier as the small Earth vessel aligned with the Horizon's docking port. The magnetic clamps engaged with a dull thud that vibrated through the deck. Air pressure equalized, and the doors began to open. Ambassador Daniel Ross stepped through first. He wore a dark blue suit that wasn't unlike Viridian formal wear, though. The cut was different. He was taller than his file had suggested, standing eye to eye with most Viridians in the room. He smiled as he approached Admiral Bennett, revealing straight white teeth. Eliana watched the standard diplomatic greeting with professional detachment. The Admiral welcomed the humans to the Horizon. The ambassador thanked her for the welcome. Routine, practiced, perfect. Then Admiral Bennett turned and gestured toward Eliana. Ambassador Ross, may I present Commander Eliana Wright, our xenobiology specialist, and your liaison during your stay with us. The ambassador stepped forward, hand extended in the human greeting gesture she had studied. Commander Wright, it's a pleasure to meet you. Eliana reached out her hand, and the moment their fingers touched, her world exploded in sensation. Heat rushed up her arm. A tingling wave spread across her skin. A sound like distant chimes filled her ears. And her band, her dead, dormant, defective band burst into brilliant blue light. So bright it shone through the fabric of her sleeve, she gasped, stumbling back a step. The room fell silent. Every Viridian eye fixed on her glowing wrist. Ambassador. Ross stood frozen, hand still extended, confusion clear on his face. Commander? He asked. Did I do something wrong? Eliana couldn't speak, couldn't move. couldn't tear her eyes away from the impossible glow emanating from her band. Admiral Bennett recovered first, stepping between them. Not at all, Ambassador. Please, let us continue with the welcome ceremony. But no one was paying attention to the Admiral's words. The Viridians stared in shock. The other humans looked confused. And Eliana Wright's world had just been turned upside down by the impossible truth. Her soulmate band had finally activated for a human. Admiral Bennett guided the confused human delegation through the rest of the welcome ceremony, while Eliana stood frozen in place. The blue glow from her band lit up her face from below, casting strange shadows. She couldn't take her eyes off. 32 years of nothing, and now this impossible reaction to an alien. Commander Wright, Admiral Bennett's voice cut through her shock. Please escort Ambassador Ross to the conference room for the initial briefing. Eliana snapped back to attention, though her heart raced. Yes, Admiral. As the crowd dispersed, whispers followed her. She could feel the stares of her fellow Viridians. Some looked shocked, others curious. A few even seemed angry. No Viridian had ever matched with a non-Viridian. It simply didn't happen. Ambassador Ross fell into step beside her. His brown eyes kept darting to her glowing wristband. I get the feeling I missed something important back there, he said. His voice was deep and pleasant, with an accent she hadn't heard before. Eliana swallowed hard. It's a cultural matter. Admiral Bennett will explain. Does it have something to do with that device on your wrist? The one that's glowing? She nodded stiffly. It's called a soulmate band. They walked in silence through the curved corridors of the ship. Other crew members they passed stopped and stared. News traveled fast on a starship. The conference room was empty when they arrived. Eliana was grateful for the moment of privacy. Please sit, she said, gesturing to the chairs around the oval table. The others will join shortly. Instead of sitting, Daniel Ross moved closer to her. Before everyone arrives, could you tell me what's happening? I feel like I've accidentally stepped into the middle of something. Eliana took a deep breath. Viridians wear these bands from childhood, she began, holding up her wrist. The blue light pulsed gently now, synchronized with her heartbeat. They're designed to activate when we meet our compatible match. Like a soulmate? Daniel asked, his eyes widening. Humans have stories about that concept. Yes, though it's more scientific than mystical. The bands react to specific biological and neurological compatibility. She paused, then added the important part. Mine has never activated before. For anyone. And no Viridian band has ever activated for a non-Viridian. Daniel took a step back, understanding dawning on his face. Until now, until me. The door slid open before she could respond. Admiral Bennett entered with the rest of the human delegation and several senior Viridian officers. Everyone's eyes went immediately to Eliana's glowing band. I see, Commander. Wright has begun to explain the situation, Admiral Bennett said. She gestured for everyone to sit. Ambassador Ross, what has occurred is unprecedented in our history. Daniel sat down, looking slightly dazed. Commander Wright mentioned these. Our soulmate bands. Are you saying that according to your technology, she and I are soulmates? The Viridian science officer, Dr. Alan Carter, leaned forward. The bands indicate optimal neurological and biological compatibility. They've been part of our culture for thousands of years. And they've never activated for any other species? Asked the human doctor, a woman named Lisa Young. Never, Dr. Carter confirmed. We've encountered 16 other spacefaring species before humans, and not once has cross-species activation occurred. Daniel looked at Eliana. She couldn't read. His expression, was it interest? Concern? Horror? What does this mean for our diplomatic mission? he asked, turning to Admiral Bennett. That remains to be seen, the Admiral replied carefully. Our government will need to be informed. This may have scientific and cultural implications we haven't yet considered. Dr. Carter couldn't contain his excitement. Commander Wright, with your permission, I'd like to run some tests. This could revolutionize our understanding of the bands. Eliana felt her face flush. I'm not a lab specimen, Doctor. Of course not, Daniel interrupted. No one should be treated like a research subject. He turned to Eliana. Whatever this means, I think we should approach it together, as equals trying to understand something new. She felt a surge of gratitude toward him. The band on her wrist pulsed brighter for a moment. Perhaps, Admiral Bennett suggested, we should continue with our scheduled diplomatic meetings while Dr. Carter develops a respectful research proposal that both Commander Wright and Ambassador Ross can review. Everyone agreed, and the meeting shifted to discussion of trade agreements and cultural exchange programs. Throughout the talks, Eliana found her attention repeatedly drawn to Daniel. He spoke thoughtfully, asked insightful questions, and showed genuine interest in Viridian culture. She noticed small details about him, the way he used his hands when explaining important points, how his eyes crinkled slightly when he smiled, the careful way he considered each person's input. Was this the band's influence, this hyper-awareness of him? Or would she have noticed these things anyway? After the meeting, Daniel approached her as the others filed out. Commander Wright, Eliana, she corrected him. It seemed silly to stand on formality given the circumstances. Eliana, he repeated with a small smile, and I'm Daniel. I was wondering if you might show me around the ship. It might give us a chance to talk privately. She nodded. That would be acceptable. They walked through the ship's main areas. The observation deck with its spectacular view of stars. The garden chamber where plants from dozens of worlds grew together. The recreation area where off-duty crew members relaxed. Your ship is beautiful, Daniel said as they stood at the observation window. Stars streaked by as the horizon traveled at faster-than-light speed. Thank you. It's been my home for 7 years now. Daniel turned to face her. May I ask a personal question? Eliana tensed but nodded. You said your band never activated before. What does that mean for a Viridian? She looked down at the band, still glowing with steady blue light. It means being different, being seen as incomplete. Many Viridians with unactivated bands choose desk jobs planetside, but I wanted to see the stars. I'm glad you did, Daniel said quietly. Their eyes met, and Eliana felt something strange, a connection that went beyond the band, beyond their different species and cultures. She quickly looked away. The Viridian government will want to study this, she said. They might. Recall me, and my government will have questions too. Daniel sighed. We're the first humans to join the coalition. This complicates things. I'm sorry, Eliana said. Daniel shook his head. Don't be. If your bands truly indicate compatibility, then maybe this is exactly what our species needed proof that humans and Viridians can connect on a fundamental level. As they continued walking, crew members passed by, some openly staring at them. Word had spread throughout the ship. Eliana could only imagine what messages were already racing toward the Viridian, homeworld and Earth. What happens now? Daniel asked as they reached his assigned quarters. I don't know, Eliana admitted. This is uncharted territory. Daniel smiled. I've always enjoyed exploring uncharted territory. It's why I became an ambassador. He hesitated, then added, whatever this means, I'd like us to face it together. Eliana looked at her band, glowing steadily in the presence of this human who had changed everything. Together, she agreed. For the first time since her band had activated, she felt something beyond shock and confusion. She felt hope. News traveled faster than light. By morning, The entire ship knew about the human who had activated Commander Wright's Soulmate band. By afternoon, messages arrived from both the Viridian High Council and Earth's diplomatic corps. Everyone wanted information, explanations, and plans for how to proceed. Eliana sat in Dr. Carter's laboratory, her arm extended as he scanned her band for the 5th time that day. The blue glow remained steady, though it brightened when Daniel entered the room. "More tests?" Daniel asked, taking a seat beside her. Dr. Carter nodded eagerly. "The quantum resonance patterns are fascinating. There's something unique about human biology that interacts with the band technology in ways we never imagined possible." Eliana withdrew her arm as soon as the scan finished. "Have you found anything useful, Doctor?" "Several possibilities." "Doctor." Carter displayed a holographic model showing swirling patterns of light. "Ambassador Ross's brainwave patterns contain frequencies we've never seen in other species. They appear to match certain quantum frequencies in your band." Daniel leaned forward, studying the display. "So, it's not random? There's a real biological reason for this connection?" "Exactly," Dr. Carter said. "And it appears to be unique to humans. I've tested the other human delegation members against inactive Viridian bands. 2 showed partial resonance, though not strong enough for activation." Eliana absorbed this information. "So not all humans and Viridians are compatible?" "No, just as not all Viridians match with each other," Dr. Carter explained. "But the fact that any cross-species matching is possible is revolutionary." Daniel turned to Eliana. "Does this change how you feel about the situation?" She considered the question carefully. The past 3 days had been overwhelming, constant tests, endless questions, and growing pressure from both governments. Through it all, Daniel had been respectful, patient, and genuinely interested in understanding her culture. "It helps, too. No, there's a scientific explanation," she admitted. "I spent my whole life believing my band was defective. Now I know it was just waiting for the right match, even if that match came from a species we hadn't yet discovered." Daniel smiled, and Eliana felt a warm pulse from her band. In response, Dr. Carter cleared his throat. "There's something else you should know. I've been researching our historical records, and I found something interesting." He brought up an ancient text on his screen. "This document from 3,000 years ago mentions visitors from the stars whose presence made certain bands glow. The account was dismissed as mythology, but given recent events... You think humans visited Viridia in the past?" Daniel asked. "Or a species with similar neurological patterns," Dr. Carter suggested. "It could explain why our bands recognize human compatibility at all." The lab door slid open, and Admiral Bennett entered with a serious expression. "Commander Wright, Ambassador Ross, we have a situation. Both governments have sent new instructions." Eliana tensed. "What kind of instructions?" "The Viridian Council wants you to return to the homeworld for extensive study. They're calling it a matter of planetary security." Daniel frowned. "And what does Earth say?" Admiral Bennett sighed. "Your government is concerned about potential biological influence. They want assurance that the band isn't affecting your judgment or altering your physiology." "That's ridiculous," Daniel said. "I feel completely normal." "Nevertheless, both sides are demanding answers we don't have yet," the Admiral continued. "A Viridian science vessel will rendezvous with us tomorrow. Commander Wright is ordered to transfer to their ship and return to Viridia." Eliana felt her stomach drop. "Admiral, I respectfully request to remain aboard the Horizon. My work here..." "I'm sorry, Eliana. The orders come directly from the High Council." The Admiral's voice softened. "This discovery is too important. They want their best scientists to study it." Daniel stood up. "She's not a laboratory specimen. She's an officer of your fleet." "I agree," Admiral Bennett said, "but my hands are tied." After the Admiral left, Eliana and Daniel walked together to the observation deck. The vast emptiness of space usually calmed her, but today it only reminded her of the distance that would soon separate them. There must be a way to fight. This, Daniel said. Eliana shook her head. Viridian society is built around the bands. Any new discovery about them is considered vital to our cultural identity. I knew this would happen eventually. What about your rights as an individual? In Viridian culture, the needs of society often outweigh individual preferences. She looked at her glowing band. Especially for something this unprecedented, Daniel leaned against the railing. On Earth, we have a long history of balancing individual rights with societal needs. It hasn't always been perfect, but we've learned that forcing people to do things against their will rarely leads to good science or good policy. Eliana considered this. Your species values personal choice highly? We believe it's fundamental. Daniel said. Our worst chapters in history came when we forgot that. As they talked, Eliana noticed other crew members entering the observation deck. Some were Viridians, but others represented the different species serving aboard the Horizon. They gathered in small groups, watching Eliana and Daniel with curious expressions. One of the ship's engineers, a young Viridian named Lily Howard, approached them hesitantly. Commander Wright, is it true you're leaving tomorrow? Eliana nodded. Orders from the High Council. Lily bit her lip, then rolled up her sleeve to reveal her own band dormant and dull. Before you go, could you? I mean, would it be possible to introduce me to the other humans in the delegation? Just to see if ... Eliana understood immediately. You want to know if your band might activate for a human too. Lily nodded, her face flushing with embarrassment. I've never had a match either. Daniel looked around the room and realized that several of the Viridians watching them wore the unmistakable long sleeves that typically hid inactive bands. How many unmatched Viridians are there? He asked quietly. More than our government likes to acknowledge, Eliana replied. Some people search their whole lives and never find a match. Daniel thought for a moment, then turned to Lily. I'd be happy to introduce you to my team. In fact, why don't we organize a proper cultural exchange? It could help both our species understand each other better. Lily's face lit up. Really? That would be wonderful. Word spread quickly. By evening, the ship's largest recreation area had been transformed into an impromptu gathering space. The entire human delegation mingled with off-duty Viridian crew members. Music played softly in the background, a mixture of Earth and Viridian, melodies that somehow complemented each other. Eliana watched from the sidelines as Daniel moved through the crowd, introducing himself and making connections. He had a natural gift for putting people at ease. This was a good idea, Admiral Bennett said, joining Eliana, though I'm not sure the High Council would approve. Are you going to stop it? Eliana asked. The Admiral smiled slightly. What cultural exchange? I only see diplomats and crew members getting to know each other better. Across the room, a gasp rose from the crowd. A young Viridian communications officer stood frozen, staring at her wrist where her band glowed with soft green light. Beside her, one of the human security officers looked equally shocked. Eliana and Daniel exchanged glances across the room. They weren't alone anymore. The discovery of a second human Viridian match changed everything. Admiral Bennett postponed Eliana's transfer to the science vessel, citing the need to study multiple cases. By morning, reports came in from other coalition ships where humans and Viridians served together. 3 more matches had been found. The phenomenon wasn't isolated. It was a pattern. Eliana stood in Admiral Bennett's office as they reviewed the incoming data. The Admiral looked both troubled and intrigued. 6 confirmed matches in total, she said. The High Council is in an uproar. What are they saying? Eliana asked. Some council members see this as a threat to Viridian cultural purity. Others view it as an opportunity. The Admiral looked up from her screen. A delegation is being sent to meet us. They'll arrive in 2 days. Daniel joined them, having been summoned by the Admiral. Earth's government has sent new instructions as well. They want me to protect the rights of any humans involved in these matches. Admiral Bennett nodded. Both sides are concerned, but for different reasons. She turned to Eliana. The Viridian science community is divided. Some believe this could reveal new insights about our bands and biology. Others fear it threatens thousands of years of tradition. And what do you believe, Admiral? Daniel asked. She smiled slightly. I believe we're witnessing history, Ambassador. Whether it's good or bad history depends on how we handle it. Later that day, Eliana met with the other Viridians, whose bands had activated for humans. They gathered in a small conference room, away from curious eyes. Lily Howard, the young engineer, couldn't stop staring at her glowing band. I never thought this would happen to me, she said. I had accepted being alone. Communications Officer Jeff Russell nodded. My family had started arranging introductions to every unmatched Viridian they could find. Nothing worked. Then I met Kate from the human security team, and he gestured to his pulsing red band. How does it feel? Asked another Viridian, a medical technician named Sam Rivers. His own band glowed a soft purple. Does it feel different because they're human? The question hung in the air. Eliana had wondered the same thing. Did her connection to Daniel feel different from what other matched Viridians experienced with their own kind? I don't think the feeling is different, she said carefully. But our situation certainly is. The door opened, and Dr. Carter entered with an excited expression. I've made a breakthrough, he announced. After comparing scans from all 6 matches, I've identified the common factor. He displayed a hologram showing complex patterns of energy. Humans possess a unique neural frequency that resonates with our bands. It's subtle our instruments barely detect it, but the bands are incredibly sensitive to it. But why didn't we discover this sooner? Eliana asked. The Coalition has encountered many species. Because it's specific to humans, Dr. Carter explained. Their brains produce patterns almost identical to our own, but with this additional frequency that seems to complete the resonance our bands are designed to detect. Jeff leaned forward. Are you saying humans and Viridians are connected somehow? I can't prove it yet, Dr. Carter admitted, but it's possible our species share a distant evolutionary connection, or that the ancient visitors mentioned in our historical records influenced both our developments. The implications were enormous. If humans and Viridians were somehow related, it would reshape both species' understanding of their origins. While the Viridians met, Daniel gathered with the human matches in another room. When both meetings ended, they all came together in the ship's garden chamber. Plants from dozens of worlds created a peaceful setting, neutral ground for both species. Daniel approached Eliana as the others formed small groups, humans and Viridians talking quietly together. How did your meeting go? He asked, confusing. She admitted. Dr. Carter has theories about why humans activate our bands, but it raises more questions than answers. Daniel nodded. My team is struggling too. Some feel special, chosen. Others worry they're being manipulated by alien technology. The bands don't control thoughts or feelings, Eliana assured him. They only identify compatibility. But they do influence perceptions, don't they? Daniel asked gently. You've been looking at me differently since your band activated. Eliana couldn't deny it. The band had made her notice him, pay attention to him in ways she might not have otherwise. But in the days since, she had come to appreciate his intelligence, his respect for others, his willingness to stand up for what he believed was right. Those observations were her own, not the band's influence. The band opened a door, she said, but I chose to walk through it. Their conversation was interrupted by the ship's communication system. Attention all personnel. An unscheduled vessel is approaching. All senior officers report to the bridge immediately. Eliana and Daniel exchanged concerned glances before hurrying to the bridge. Admiral Bennett stood before the main view screen, her expression grim. On the screen, a sleek Viridian vessel approached. "They're 2 days early," she said as Eliana. And Daniel arrived. "Who is it?" Daniel asked. "The Viridian Science Minister," Admiral Bennett replied, "and members of the Traditional Values Coalition." Eliana felt her heart sink. The Traditional Values Coalition was a powerful political group on Viridia. They advocated for strict adherence to ancient customs and resisted changes to Viridian culture. "They're hailing us," the communications officer reported. On screen, Admiral Bennett ordered. The image shifted to show an elderly Viridian man with stern features. Minister Greg Peters of the Science Council. Beside him stood a woman in formal robes, Council Member Linda Cole, leader of the Traditional Values Coalition. "Admiral Bennett," the minister began, "we've come to address the cross-species band activations. This matter requires immediate attention." "We weren't expecting you for 2 more days, Minister," Admiral Bennett replied calmly. "The situation has escalated," Councilmember Cole interjected. "News of these unnatural bonds has reached the public. There are concerns about contamination of our sacred traditions." Daniel stepped forward. "With respect, Council Member, there's nothing unnatural about people finding connection across cultural differences." Cole's eyes narrowed. "And you must be the human who started this crisis." "Ambassador Daniel Ross," he introduced himself with a slight bow. "And I wouldn't call it a crisis. Perhaps it's an opportunity." "That remains to be seen," Minister Peters said. "We request permission to board your vessel, Admiral. We must examine these matches ourselves." "Permission granted," Admiral Bennett replied. "We'll prepare for your arrival." After the transmission ended, Eliana turned to the Admiral. "They'll want to separate us. Take us back to Viridia." Admiral Bennett nodded. "Most likely. But remember, we're not just dealing with Viridian interests anymore. This is now a coalition matter involving 2 member species." She looked at Daniel. "Ambassador, I suggest you contact Earth for additional support." Daniel nodded. "Already. Done. Earth's representative to the Coalition Council is on her way." As they prepared for the minister's arrival, Eliana and Daniel found a moment alone in the corridor. "Whatever happens," Daniel said quietly, "remember that bands or no bands, connections between people matter. No government can dictate how people feel about each other." Eliana looked at her glowing band, then back at Daniel. "In Viridian culture, the bands have always guided our relationships. Following their wisdom is our tradition." She paused, then added, "But perhaps it's time for some new traditions." The Viridian delegation arrived with the formality of a state visit. Minister Peters and Councilmember Cole stepped onto the USS Horizon with an entourage of scientists and officials. Their expressions were serious as Admiral Bennett greeted them in the docking bay. Eliana stood at attention beside Daniel, her band glowing visibly through her sleeve. Councilmember Cole's eyes fixed on it immediately, her lips thinning with disapproval. "Commander Wright," Minister Peters said, "I've read the reports about your situation. Quite extraordinary." "Thank you, Minister," Eliana replied carefully. "It's not a compliment." Councilmember Cole cut in. "These cross-species activations threaten the very foundation of our society. The bands are sacred, meant for true Viridian pairs only." Daniel stepped forward. "With respect, Council Member, the bands themselves seem to disagree with that assessment. They're responding to humans naturally, without any technological interference." Cole's face hardened. "You know nothing of our traditions, human." "Perhaps. We should continue this discussion in the conference room, Admiral Bennett suggested smoothly as they walked through the ship. They passed several crew members, including 2 of the newly matched pairs. The Viridian delegation whispered among themselves, pointing at the glowing bands. The conference room was already occupied when they arrived. A tall, dignified human woman stood as they entered. She wore the formal blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic, cords with gold trim marking her as a high-ranking official. Ambassador Nancy White, she introduced herself, Earth's representative to the Coalition Council. Minister Peters looked surprised. "We weren't informed of your arrival." "I came as soon as I heard about the situation," Ambassador White replied. "As this matter concerns citizens of Earth, we have a vested interest in the proceedings." The meeting began tensely. Minister Peters presented the Viridian government's position. All matched. Viridians should return to the homeworld for study. The bands were Viridian technology, and any unexpected behavior needed thorough investigation. Council member Cole went further. "These activations must be mistakes," she insisted. "Some malfunction or outside influence. Viridian bands cannot possibly recognize aliens as true matches." "Yet they do," Dr. Carter countered. He presented his findings about the unique neural frequencies in humans that resonated with the bands. "The evidence suggests this is not a malfunction, but an unexpected compatibility." Ambassador White listened carefully before speaking. "From Earth's perspective, this discovery represents an opportunity for deeper connection between our species. However, we cannot allow our citizens to be subjected to forced testing or separation from their matched partners." "This is a Viridian matter," Cole insisted. "It became a coalition matter the moment it involved 2 member species," Admiral Bennett reminded her. The debate continued for hours. Proposals were made and rejected. Tempers flared. Through it all, Eliana and Daniel sat side by side, their presence a constant reminder of what was at stake. Finally, Minister Peters raised his hand for silence. "Perhaps we should hear from those most affected." "Commander Wright, what do you believe should happen?" All eyes turned to Eliana. She felt the weight of tradition and duty pressing down on her. For her entire life, she had followed Viridian customs, even when her unmatched status made her an outsider. Now she stood at a crossroads between worlds. She looked at her glowing band, then at Daniel beside her, and found her voice. "The bands have been part of our culture for thousands of years," she began. "We've trusted their wisdom, believed in their ability to guide us to compatible partners. Now they're showing us something new, that compatibility can exist beyond the boundaries we imagined." She straightened her shoulders. "I believe we should trust the bands now, just as we always have. If they recognize humans as matches for some Viridians, perhaps that's not a mistake, but a message. A sign that our species are meant to connect in ways we never anticipated." Council Member Cole shook her head. "Pretty words, but they ignore thousands of years of tradition." "Traditions grow and evolve," Daniel said quietly. "On Earth, we've learned that holding too tightly to the past can blind us to new possibilities." Minister Peters studied them thoughtfully. "You suggest we simply accept these cross-species bonds?" "I suggest we study them with respect for the individuals involved," Eliana clarified. "No forced separations, no treating people like laboratory specimens. We can learn from this situation without sacrificing dignity or choice." Ambassador White nodded approvingly. "Earth supports this approach. We propose a joint research initiative with volunteer participants, both human and Viridian." The room fell silent as Minister Peters considered the proposal. Even Council Member Cole waited for his response. "The Science Ministry is committed to understanding this phenomenon," he said finally. "But I cannot ignore the cultural implications. The Traditional Values Coalition has significant influence in our government." "Then give them data, not fear," Dr. Carter suggested. Let me show you something. He activated the room's holographic display, showing images from the ship's cultural exchange gathering. Viridians and humans talked, laughed, and shared stories. In one corner, a human taught a Viridian how to play a card game. In another, a Viridian demonstrated a traditional dance. This is what happens when different species find common ground, Dr. Carter said. Connection, understanding, growth. Minister Peters watched the images with interest. Even Council Member Cole's stern expression softened slightly. I have a proposal, Admiral Bennett said. A 3-month joint study program here on the horizon. All matched pairs remain together, participating in voluntary research. Both governments receive regular reports. After 3 months, we present our findings to the Coalition Council. Minister Peters stroked his chin thoughtfully. It would allow for proper scientific study while respecting individual rights. The Coalition values both scientific advancement and cultural preservation. Ambassador White added, This approach serves both. Councilmember Cole frowned. And if the research confirms these matches are valid, what then? Then we adapt, Minister Peters said simply, as all species must to survive. After more discussion, an agreement was reached. The matched pairs would remain on the horizon. Research would continue under the joint supervision of both governments. In 3 months, they would reconvene to determine the next steps. As the meeting ended, Eliana and Daniel stood on the observation deck, watching the stars. Her band glowed steadily, a blue light that represented something entirely new in the galaxy. Do you think it will work? Daniel asked. Will your people accept humans as potential matches? Some will resist, Eliana admitted. Change is never easy, especially when it challenges core beliefs. But others will embrace it. She smiled slightly. Already there are reports of Viridians volunteering for coalition ships with human crew members, hoping to find their own matches. Daniel laughed. And humans are requesting assignments on Viridian vessels. It seems both our species are curious about these connections. The bands have always guided us toward compatible partners, Eliana said. Perhaps now they're guiding our species toward a deeper connection as well. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars streaked by outside the window. For years, Eliana had hidden her band, ashamed of its dormant state. Now it glowed proudly on her wrist, no longer a symbol of deficiency, but of new possibilities. What happens next? Daniel asked. Eliana thought about the tests they would face, the challenges of bridging 2 different worlds, the questions that remained unanswered. But for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone in facing the unknown. We explore, she said simply. Together. Around them, the USS Horizon continued its journey through space, carrying the beginning of something new, a connection between species that promised to change the future of the galaxy, one glowing band at a time.